Welcome everyone to another episode of OnForm podcast brought to you by Formfunction, hosted by Duel of Doves with Luke and Omar. And today is a very exciting day for us. We've been meaning to talk to this artist for a very, very long time. And now we have finally secured a time slot that works for everyone. Laura, aka Iamlaurael, it's so good to have you on here. This is brilliant. Thank you so much for giving us your time. How have you been?
Hey guys, it's so good to be here. Being really good. Yeah, super excited to talk to you.
Oh, absolutely. Awesome. Yeah, Luke and I have definitely woken up a little bit extra early to make sure that we record this because of the different time zones. So we're so happy to have you on here, and yeah, can't wait to get into this this episode. I guess for those who don't know you, it'd be great for you just to kind of give us a bit of a breakdown on who you are and kind of introduce yourself to our listeners.
Yeah, of course. So my name is Laura. I go by Iamlaurael on Twitter and basically all the socials, but I'm a full-time illustrator. I've been doing NFTs now since February, so that's how I know you guys, but I've been doing art for a living for about 3 years. So yeah, full-time illustrator. I love to draw dogs, cities, people, characters, storytelling, anything like that. That's basically, what I love.
Awesome. Yeah, awesome. How long have you been doing illustration for? Like, how long have you been a full-time illustrator for?
So I started full-time at, actually it's 2 years, not 3. So at the beginning of 2020, it was my official full-time start.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, awesome. And like, were you drawing before that? Like, was there a bit of a lead up to that sort of point?
Yeah, so I've been I loved art all of my life. I think I'm like your daughter. Like I used to draw like all the time, little sketches, little drawings, just really, really into it. And yeah, I always kind of knew I wanted to do art, but after high school and kind of like moving countries, I got very distracted and kind of like went into the jobs that had the salaries, and I was guaranteed money. And also I kind of really didn't know what I wanted to do with art. Like I love to draw, but I couldn't really pick a direction. So I really struggled with that. So I just went into full-time jobs, just your normal 9 to 5. Yeah, but I hated it. So it took me a little while. It took me about 5 years after high school to kind of like go through multiple jobs and then to fully decide that I'm going to dedicate myself to art and just going to try to make it work. And yeah, I was juggling a waitressing job and building my portfolio for a little bit, and then things just took off, and I was able to do that full time at the beginning of 2020, right before COVID hit.
Yeah, wow. So you took the plunge at the beginning of COVID to do art, which is great because you've got a lot of downtime. You're not necessarily going anywhere because of lockdown, but again, that still would have been difficult to maintain kind of a balance between your art and kind of maintaining your sanity and stuff. So how'd you kind of deal with that a little bit?
Yeah, so when I was I was doing waitressing and building my portfolio, and that was all of basically 2019. Mm-hmm. And in the summer of 2019, I was putting my listings, my drawings up, the commissions on Etsy. So it started to kind of get a little bit of traffic. So I started getting orders for commission art, dog portraits, and I was still doing the waitressing. So slowly at the end of the summer, I started cutting down my hours in the restaurant and then just focusing more and more on art as I was getting more and more orders. And then I think in November, I was pretty set. I knew like, this is it. I'm doing this. I'm quitting. And I did. I gave my notice. And then, when I went into 2020 and then COVID hit, I was like, oh my gosh, what is happening here? The good thing is it's all online. So the orders were coming. I didn't have to leave my house, so it was all online. It was all Etsy based. And yeah, it was tough, but I managed.
I bet. Before we get into the actual art side of things and kind of looking at the different levels of work that you've produced for freelance and NFT, is it cool if you kind of take us back a little bit just so we can kind of get to know Laura's journey as far back as you can, just so we can kind of learn a little bit more about you, because you also mentioned that you moved country, so I'm interested also in digging into that a bit.
Okay, so I'm going to give you a novel right now of Laura's
Please, let's go. Yes.
So I was born in Lithuania, in the capital city in Vilnius, and it's very different. You know, I was born in '91, so that's when Lithuania just got their independence from Russia. So it's the country that in Eastern Europe, it's a little bit, I guess if I would compare it to the US, it's a little bit behind. So things were a little bit different there. So I was growing up there. I didn't have a good parents, so I had a little bit of a tough childhood. They were both very heavy into alcohol.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, you know, the childhood was very, very rough. But I was very kind of like, I guess it kind of helped me to mature really quickly. But I was also a very independent child, and art was kind of my escape. So every time there was like issues with the family, the parents, like art is what I found myself at peace with, and you know, I could concentrate and kind of lose myself there. So that's how it all started. And I think when I was about 12, I got adopted by my aunt. So I still stayed within a family, but I went through a lot of transitions when I was a teenager. So I got adopted. I kind of like faded away my relationship with my parents. Then my biological mom passed away. So I went through a lot of that. But again, like art was something that was really always there for me. That was something that stayed constant. It never changed. And it kind of like gave me hope for the future too, because it's like, as an artist, right? You can draw whatever you want. You can do whatever you want with that. And it kind of gives you like so many possibilities. So I was always dreaming high, and like, you know, I was like, oh, I'm going to work for Disney. I'm going to do animations. I'm going to do this. Like, it was always like that dreamer thing that kind of like helped me escape my reality, which was very, very sad at that. Like during my teenage years, it was just like super, super tough. But, you know, I got adopted, and my adoptive mom, my aunt, she is amazing. She's a single mom. She has 2 children. And she just stuck me in, and, you know, she was so encouraging with art. She would see my drawings every day, and she would be like, Laura, and my drawings were so bad. They were not good, you know, but she'd be like, you know, you just keep doing, you just keep working, you know, you will do great. Like, so she was very, very encouraging. And then when I was about 15, we all moved to Ireland. So she wanted a fresh start for herself and her kids and me. And Ireland was a little bit better because it was not as behind as
at the time.
Huh? Sorry?
How many kids did your auntie have? So how many cousins did you have?
So 2. She had 2.
Okay, so 3 in total, including your cousins. Yeah.
Yeah. So and then we moved to Ireland, and there I think I was about 15 when we moved, and my life there completely changed. I mean, it's just the culture, the people, they were so, and I think you guys know, because I think there's probably a lot of Irish in Australia, I would think, you know, they're just really nice people, and they were all like accepting and encouraging in a way. And it was just like, it's very, very different. In Lithuania, I was also bullied in school because of my parents. So when I moved to Ireland, there was no such a thing, you know. People actually wanted to get to know me, and like it was just so different. And my art teachers there were very encouraging. So yeah, we moved. I had to learn how to speak English because I didn't speak English. So that was all new. I had 2 years left of high school, and I had to learn a new language, but I did it. And again, art was there for me because it was just the only thing that I knew. And then I could just show my drawings to my art teacher, and she would know, and she would like encourage me. And it was just like so amazing, you know? And yeah, so that was that. I finished high school. I did like a 2-year portfolio course because I couldn't go to an actual proper college because of my language barrier.
Right.
My art teacher actually recommended me to take a couple of years off and just do the portfolio course, learn the language, advance my skills, just keep building my portfolio. And then she said, you know, once you're good with those things, you will be able to get into a good college, and you go from there. So I took her advice, and that's what I did. I did the portfolio course, and that's when I really knew like I was going to do art.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, and then but I finished the portfolio course and then I moved to New York. So I didn't even get to go to a proper college.
So when did you move to New York? What year was that?
So that was in 2013.
2013. And you moved there by yourself or with your auntie and your cousins?
No, I left them behind. I fell in love. So that's what got me to move here.
You fell in love with an Irish guy and then you guys moved together
I
to
fell
New
in love with an American guy. He's from New
Oh,
York.
okay.
We met in Ireland. Yeah, we met in Ireland. We did a little bit of long distance, for a while, and then decided to kind of venture out and move to New York. And when I moved to New York here, again, it was like a whole new different culture and a whole new set of people and different mentalities. And where Ireland is, I feel like a little bit more easygoing. Like New York was a little bit more like, what job do you have? What's your salary? Like, like you kind of like always have to think about the money. And that really stressed me out. And also like everything here is so much more expensive.
Absolutely.
So I was like, okay, well, I can't really like go to college, I cannot take that loan. So I have to like figure out how I'm going to do this. And just to kind of like bounce back with art, it didn't like seem realistic and it was too scary, so I decided to just like try out different jobs, and that's what I did. So when I moved here in 2013, I kind of gave up on art. I didn't draw at all. I kind of made a decision. I thought I will never get back into it. I thought it was just something that I did during my childhood and my teenage years. And now I have to be serious. I have to be a proper adult, and get a proper job. And I thought that was it,
Yeah, for sure. So
I have a question, just a little nuance back a couple of steps. When you came to Ireland in those teenage years and had to like, I guess, get used to the culture plus like learn a new language at the same time, like how did that feel? Like how was that specific moment of like, English, I guess, starting from zero and then sort of ramping up from there? Like how was that initial part when you first sort of moved?
It was, so at first I was like, I hated the idea because, as a teenager, you do have some friends that you're like leaving behind. And so I hated that part, that I had to go into something completely new and leave everybody behind. But also that kind of like excited me. Like I was like, okay, because I had it so rough in my childhood, I was like, this is the fresh start. So maybe this is actually will be good for me. But when I moved, I guess I was like, okay, wow, nobody speaks Lithuanian here. Like, what the heck do I do? But I looked out because in the village that we moved to, there was a lot of Lithuanians there, I guess, that moved prior, So I connected with them and they were all the same age. So they kind of like helped me and kind of walked me through a little bit. But my first day in school when I went there was probably the hardest thing I did, because like we went into this like all like in a hall where they like welcome you, and then they're like, like, oh, welcome, this is going to be an amazing year, blah blah blah. They basically talk to you, the teachers. And I was sitting in that hall with all these new people, new kids, new teachers, and I didn't understand a word they were saying. Like I didn't understand anything at all, and it was so stressful. I was like, how am I going to do this? Like I don't know what's going on, so it was really, really scary.
Yeah,
I think the first week.
Yeah, sorry, carry on.
Yeah, the first week was insane. It was really scary. I will never forget it.
Yeah, the reason why I'm smiling and nodding, because I can definitely identify with that. I also came from a place where English is not my first language, so I've had to learn English from scratch. But I learned it, I think I was 10 or 11 years old. But my family also migrated to a brand new country, brand new culture, had to learn English for the very first time. Kids kind of pick on you and stuff, if you don't understand certain things or whatever. So I can totally identify with that. I wanted to go a little bit further back, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I'm assuming you were the only child in your family, or did you have any support?
I was the only child.
Sure. Because a lot of people, I'm not too sure what the landscape is kind of in Lithuania when it comes down to adolescents and what kind of teenagers or even kids get up to. But usually people tend to kind of go either very far left or very far right in terms of how they deal with these circumstances. And what I mean by that is some people might to perhaps lean more into, you know, recreational drugs and alcohol abuse and start, you know, taking their lives in a totally different way and perhaps even abusing themselves and stuff. But it seems like, I'm not sure, and obviously if you're not comfortable talking about it, please, there's no pressure. But what I've heard is that you've managed to kind of avoid that side of it and kind of just let your imagination take over. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, it is. You know, it's actually a really, really good point, because I think this part right here that you described is actually what makes me me, I think. And it's because I think my parents were so bad. They were alcoholics. They were very, very abusive to each other, to me. It was really, really bad. I mean, my dad was like so aggressive. It was not good.
Yeah.
But I think all that I saw growing up, I was so set in my mind, I will never be like them. I will never be the same. Like, no matter whatever happens to me in my life, I will never go down that path. Yeah. And, you know, I had some friends that were in very similar situations as me. So they also had like parents who were drinking heavily and are abusive. And some of those of my friends, they actually, I just remember growing up, and they just started drinking and they started going the same route. And I remember even having a conversation with one of my friends, and I was like, why are you doing this? Like, you shouldn't be doing this. And, you know, she said, you know, she's like, my parents are like that. I'm going to be like this. There's nothing I can change. You know, wow. She actually like chose that. And that was like such a clear indication for me that this is actually a choice that you're making. And you have to be very, very careful of how you do this. So yeah, I decided like, I'm going to do everything I can to make it, to build my life, and not to ever, you know, be in a position like they were.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Obviously, sometimes it's hard traveling down memory lane, but we do definitely appreciate the transparency. So getting back on track, you fell in love. You're in New York, 2013. How did you start to slowly get back to art? Because you were mentioning that now that you're becoming an adult, you need to focus on making money and just doing boring adult shit. So at which point did you go, actually, hold on, I want to get back to because what I'm doing is fucking boring and I have to get back to who I am.
Yeah, so yeah, when I moved here, I got like all these questions from the new people that I was meeting, you know, like what are you doing? What's your job? How much are you making? And anyways, so I was like, okay, like I cannot do art. I'm just gonna get a job and I'm gonna make a lot of money with this job and I'm gonna be very happy. This is what I was telling myself, you know. And I was like, and I'm not gonna do art, and I'm not gonna regret it, and this is it. Anyways, I probably had like 15 jobs. I don't know. I was just bouncing back. I was in a law firm. I did real estate. I did blogging. I did like everything. Animal hospital, you know, the reception. And I tried everything, and like nowhere I felt happy, like nowhere. I was like, I would give it like a month or two, maybe 3. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is miserable. Like I cannot be doing this, you know? And the last job that I had was actually running a blog for one of the small businesses in our little town. And he basically, my boss, he wanted me to go to interview like local artists and local like people who were making a living, like doing something creative. And I was actually doing interviews like this, and I was asking a lot of questions like, how did they like start create? How did they like start making a living with that? That was like my whole set of questions. And it was just like one interview after another, and like these people of all ages and just like all like I guess walks of life were telling me how they were so persistent and they never gave up, and they just kept on building and kept on like trying to like get ahead, and they never listened to naysayers, and they just basically pushed through. And I think I was having this one interview, and this girl actually said it to me. She's like, you know, I always go by the rule, I don't compare my beginning to somebody else's middle. And she's like, and I have learned to like treat this as a journey. She's like, I'm trying to fall in love with all the bad things, like as much as I love the good things. And that like really hit it home for me. I'm like, you know what? Like she's like so on it. And that was at the end of 2018. And, you know, at the end of like the year, when the Christmas hits and New Year's, and you kind of like give yourself like the new goals for the new year, I was sitting down with my friend. I was actually back home in Ireland with my friends. And I said to one of my best friends, I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to get back into art. And she couldn't believe it. She was so happy. She's like, really? I was like, yeah. I said, I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to get a waitressing job so I can have a little bit more flexibility with hours. And I'm going to work on my portfolio and just see where that takes me. Wow. And I went back home after the holidays and I did that. I quit my job. My boss was really unhappy. Yeah. We moved to the city. We moved into Brooklyn because we were a little bit in the country.
Sorry, when you say we, is this you and your boyfriend or?
Yeah. Yep. So we moved into the city. I got a waitressing job here and just started working on my portfolio. And that was all of the 2019, basically.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Cool. Could you maybe dig into specifically the feels of it all? So you mentioned your misery, I guess, going through your 15 jobs and trying things and not working out from the point of view of your happiness. When you made that plunge and sort of decided to dedicate back to the art, not necessarily when you took it full time, but just like when you made that decision, like how did you feel? Like, could you like maybe describe those feels a little bit?
Oh, it's the hardest thing to describe. I felt happy, excited, like nervous, but it felt so right. Like it just felt so right. And I was really, because I feel like I'm a very sensitive person, you know? So if somebody tells me something negative, I'm going to take it to heart. So I knew that I was going to have like comments like, oh, you cannot make a living with art, or like, oh, maybe your art isn't good. Like, you know, these people like sometimes make comments like, anyway, like, you know what I mean? Like you can have a little comment on social media, or you can have a relative say something, you know? So when I decided to go back into art, I said to myself, I will not listen to anyone. I will literally not take anyone's advice. I just gonna do what I want to do. I'm gonna draw what I want to draw, and that is gonna be it. And I'm gonna see where that takes me. And that was like so empowering. Yeah, it was amazing. It was an amazing feeling. I like felt on top of the world, you know?
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. When you say it just felt so right, like I imagine like you would just know in your gut, like you would just know in your being, I guess, like you're making the right call for yourself kind of thing.
Yeah, because I felt like I lost such a big part of myself during those 5 years. You know, I learned a lot through going through these different jobs and meeting these different people, but I lost such a big part of who I was and what I liked. And, you know, it was a huge loss, you know, and I kind of didn't feel like myself. So when I made a decision to get back into it, I just felt like, okay, this is me. This is what I'm going to do. And it just, felt so right.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So you've got your portfolio together. You started making art. When was the first time you made money from your art?
That was the biggest, that was one of the biggest steps, I think, in all of my artistic journey, is actually charging for my art. Because you can draw where you want, but that, you know, that first like payment that you take from somebody is really, really hard, because you don't know if you're good enough. And, you know, that little voice inside your head can tell you that you're not. And you see other artists, they're doing so much better. So you're always comparing yourself. But I was just drawing random things. And, you know, I really like the line drawing. So I was trying to sketch down some dogs. And when I decided to put that up on Etsy, I really didn't think much off of it, you know. I just saw that people were offering custom artworks on Etsy, and I was like, you know what, this doesn't hurt. So I put it up, and then somebody bought it, and that was like $10. I think it was less than $10. You know, it was such a like little amount. Yeah. But somebody purchased it, and that was it. I was like, oh wow, like somebody's actually gonna pay me for this. Yeah. You know, and we just went from there.
Amazing.
No, that's really cool, because looking at your work, like obviously looking through your Instagram, I'm on my phone just kind of browsing through some of the stuff that you did and looking at some of your earlier stuff. There is that kind of like consistency with dogs and the line drawings and stuff like that. Like, how did you develop that style? Why dogs? Talk us through that a little bit.
So I am a big dog lover. I have always loved dogs. Even in Lithuania, when I was growing up, I was like feeding all the stray dogs on the street, you know? I just really love dogs.
Yeah.
And I really love all Disney movies like 101 Dalmatians. And I don't know if you've seen it, but there's that part where the owners walk with their dogs and they look the same. And I think that's like my favorite part in the whole like world. I just love that so much. And so I really wanted to be drawing something like that, drawing people and drawing dogs and them looking kind of cohesive to each other, you know, and I just kind of enjoyed that. So yeah. And then people liked it. They wanted to have a portrait. And yeah, that was the team for many years. It still is.
Yeah. That the portrait part is an interesting part because I had never heard of people commissioning artists to get a portrait of their dog. Like that's a very New York thing, in my opinion, because you wouldn't see people here in Melbourne going, "Oh yeah, I'm going to pay an artist to take a to make a portrait of my dog." I've yet to hear it. I'm not sure. Maybe Luke has, but how did that develop? Like, did people just go, "Hey, we've seen your art is awesome. Can I bring my dog over to you and you can just draw them?" Like, how did that work
It's
out?
actually really interesting point you make, because I think in Lithuania and in Ireland, it's not like I have never met people there. I met people who love their dogs, but I've never heard that somebody would go out of their way to pay money to get the portrait done.
Yeah.
Like, but the thing is, like with Etsy and Instagram, you know, people come from all over the world. So I actually have gotten orders from Ireland and Australia and Europe and like everywhere basically.
Yeah.
And I think it's this community of dog lovers, you know, people who really, really love their dogs. And, you know, like on Instagram, they have like dog accounts. So that's basically where my whole like audience is, you know. They love their dogs, they photograph their dogs, you know, they like the little memories of their dogs. And yeah, there's a lot of people.
Yeah.
A lot of people.
Yeah. And also from dogs, then it looks like you've started to slowly introduce more kind of urban settings, buildings, very much New York-esque. Like I think the first time I saw your art, I was just like, this can easily be printed on like a silk scarf. I remember I made a comment a while ago. I was like, this could be like a Hermes scarf. I'm not too sure if you remember that. That was the first time I came across your art. And then I started digging through and I'm like, holy crap, this is some amazing stuff. Talk us through how your style kind of developed a little bit more from portraits to then developing these kind of like scenes, you know, where you look at it and you can immediately kind of escape to another place for like 3 seconds or something.
Yeah, so I think with the dog portraits, that was a really good intro for a line work, you know, and I really got into that, the lines, the shapes, the characters. But it also at the same time, it didn't feel enough. Like I felt like, because that's nice to make money with, right? And I'm thankful I was able to. But as far as like artistic expression goes, that wasn't enough. So for me, I think as an artist, I love storytelling. I love when you look at an image, whether it's a photograph, illustration, a painting, like there's a story and you kind of like can put yourself there and you can imagine it and understand it in your own way. So I really wanted to kind of venture out that way and see if my art can tell a story, you know. So I started drawing. I love New York City. I love Brooklyn. I love the tall buildings, the history. I love the city lights, you know, all those things really inspire me.
Yeah.
So I just started sketching that out and drawing it and just kind of like putting these scenes. And I think a lot of it have like women with dogs. And I just love that. Like, it's just like you in the city and you're just kind of like alone, but not alone really, you know, because you're surrounded by so much. So yeah, the storytelling part was definitely something that I wanted to explore more, and so it started.
And you can definitely see that in your work, because then what you've got is also you're telling stories, you're introducing new layers, you're introducing new colors, but then by doing that, you're almost trying, you've captured a different type of audience now that's looking at your work. So talk us through how on a professional level, that type of work got you to that kind of platform where now you're getting commissioned by the likes of, I don't know, Forbes, Mary Claire, is that how you pronounced it? Martha Stewart. So kind of talk us through how you went through that journey, because it seems like it's a massive leap from selling your stuff online to then being commissioned to some heavy hitting blue chip names.
Yeah, so it was actually in the year of COVID that it all started like that, because I started drawing these sceneries in the cities and all these like travel places, you know, and a lot of people couldn't leave their houses. They were under lockdowns.
Sure.
So that became kind of like a thing on its own, where people kind of wanted to imagine themselves being in some place, but like imagine as if they're traveling or visiting loved ones somewhere special. And that started to become like a huge thing. People just really love that idea, like, because portraits are, it's usually just very simple, right? But I was offering to put them into like cities and landscapes and do something very different. And because of COVID, people just, that was like the whole thing, just the travel art, you know, really nice for gifts too. And then I got featured in quite a few big publications that was featuring the custom side and the prints, you know. I guess the writers really loved the idea as well, which was amazing. It was such a like boost for me, you know. But yeah, I really enjoyed that. I think I didn't see many artists offering those kind of portraits.
Sure.
So I think at that time it was really like helping me to get a little bit boosted with the community, you know, because I was doing something very different. And it worked out, and I really enjoyed it too.
Yeah, absolutely.
How long does something like that, how long does something like a portrait like that take, like with all the scenery and like the everything that comes with it, because it is quite different? Like, is it like like how long, like end to end, does it take to sort of produce something like that?
Yeah, so it didn't used to take me that long before, because I think I was just like learning. But now I feel like that my skills are really advanced, and these illustrations are really detailed. They can take me anywhere between 20 to 40 hours. I like sometimes like the Lurkers pieces, the collection that I'm working on now, like these pieces easily take me 40 hours between the research for reference images to actually illustrating it and making everything work perfectly with compositions and the storytelling part. It's a lot of work, but it's nice. It's nice when it all comes together, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and how do you know when it's done? Like, cause like with that sort of time span, you know, process reference images and like polish, like how do you know, like think of a Lurkers piece specifically, like how do you know when it's done, like this is good to go kind of thing?
I think it just feels right, you know. It just feels like, you know, this is it. I do try to kind of like ask myself questions like, would I hang this on the wall? You know, if I saw this on social media, would I like this myself? Would I share it? You know, would I buy it myself? Like, I always ask these questions. And if I can answer those with a confident yes, and if I don't have anything to pick apart in that illustration, then I'm like, okay, this is set, this is done. Like, I'm really happy with this.
Just before we get to your kind of NFT journey, when I first came across your art, I was just like, okay, what the hell am I looking at? Because there's so much detail. I can see the story, but also the detail is what captivated me, because that was the first thing that really grabbed your attention. There's so much consideration and thought that's been put in every piece. Like, you can tell there's a story, there's, you know, there's little figures and there's the Lurkers and stuff, but it's just the detail that kind of brings it all together and kind of ties in the story. Like, how did you develop that eye to include all these things into like one still piece? Because it's just a lot of stuff that's in there, but everything just works.
I was thinking of posting this on my Twitter. I wanted to show the very first storybook illustration that I did back in like 2020 and the illustration right now, because the very first one was so plain. I mean, it was so minimal. It had color, it had like some detail, but it was extremely minimal. And now that I look at my pieces, they're so jam-packed with everything. And I think it's because I've been drawing literally every day for the last couple of years. And it's just like, I think it's just like developing, you know, it's just naturally developing, you know. I'm of course inspired by a lot of artists. So like, I always look, you know, what artists are doing, how they're drawing, and then I look at my work and thinking of how I can advance. And I think, those details are really what I like, and I really enjoy drawing them. And yeah, it's just kind of coming all together.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. Now, before we get into NFT, because I know NFT will be there for a while, but I just wanted to kind of set the tone a little bit, because looking at your art before your NFT journey to what it is now, obviously there's two distinct stories that you're telling, but also the feel, the mood. Like there's a nice kind of dog portraits walking through a city, someone who's dressed really nice with the dog leash, et cetera, et cetera. And then your art, your NFT art, things just get dark, and it's just like, whoa, there's a massive shift between the two. But when you look at them, you're like, yeah, that could be the same artist. So talk us through that transition a little bit, and why did you kind of head towards that more dark kind of way of producing art for your NFT work?
Yeah. So, with the custom illustrations and everything that I did prior, all the portraits, it's very, very happy. It's very like feel good, because you're also like me as an artist, I have to be selling my work and my commissions, right? So I want to sell something happy, something very, very positive. And with those commissions too, you're always drawing people's requests, so it's always going to be something happy. But also, like with the commission work, I've been getting very, very burnt out, because you're always drawing somebody else, like what somebody else is imagining. And it was like towards the end of like last year, it was getting really, really hard. I remember I took the whole like October off. I couldn't even take any custom orders, because I was just really burnt out from that. Like I felt like, yes, I get to draw for a living and I'm extremely thankful, but I don't feel like I'm expressing myself enough. And that's when, when I discovered the NFTs and the one-on-one space, and when I started to really listen in and kind of observing what the artists were doing, I kind of like saw the way I could fit in. So I saw that I could have a collection, completely something that I would love, and it could be a storytelling collection, and I went with the dark, because the story is dark. I guess like when you will see the last two pieces now, it will all make sense, and it will not be as dark as it looks from the very first pieces, but I really wanted to go with that message, I guess, of seeing the world in black and white, and then kind of changing your view into more color. Like I really wanted to have this collection to have a really, really big meaning, rather than just putting something like super colorful out there and just being done with that. Like I just wanted to put a little more thought into it.
Yeah. Why do you want your work to have a meaning, and why did you start off with dark and perhaps ending with what you're about to end with soon? Like what made you kind of choose that route?
I guess it's just part of self-expression, of like starting, and maybe that could relate to my life too. I was thinking a little bit about that. You start with something like super, super dark, but you kind of like fight through that darkness and you get into a little bit more color. And maybe this is the way I'm expressing myself as an artist and as a person, and it's been really, for me, it's been really, really fulfilling to be doing this collection and to be putting each piece out there and kind of like getting brighter and more colorful each time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I guess it's just a self-expression and just something that I wanted to try. And I actually do really love like darker kind of themed, animations like Addams Family and like stuff like that. Like, I have a little bit of love for that. So it's been nice to do something along those lines.
Absolutely. And I think that's where I was going with that, because every artist who expresses themselves, that expression needs to come from somewhere. And sometimes we need to dig in deep within to kind of find that starting point. So that's where I was trying to go with that question, is that listening to your backstory up until now, and obviously you've scratched the surface with it, you've given us a summary of it, but it seems like that's almost in parallel to the work that you're producing right now. Is that a fair statement in terms of your journey to date?
Yeah, I would say it is. I think at the beginning when I knew I wanted to do the Lurkers, like I knew the story and, you know, the goal for the story. I didn't really think of it that it would relate to me. But now that I'm almost finished with the collection and I'm looking at each piece and just, you see the storytelling there, and it's very simple. It's the kids and it's the lurkers, right? But you can also look at it in a more meaningful way, like the darkness, like it could be just like the darkness within us, like, so there's like a little bit of a deeper messaging there. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like totally my life, you know. So like illustrating this, like, and illustrating these feelings, like from black and white into the color. Yeah,
absolutely. And without giving away too much, who are the lurkers, and why lurkers? Like, how did that come about? You know, how did that thinking develop?
So I always loved like children's stories with monsters, with monsters that are maybe a little bit not too scary, you know, spooky but not too scary. And when I was sketching out just the ideas for the lurkers, I just kind of wanted it to be like more of a shadow, more something like it's big and it's out there and it's right behind you and it's like lurking right on you, but it's not really, you cannot really see it, you know. So that was the whole thing when I was sketching that out. And yeah, I just came out of it like a super basic shape. Very, I mean, it's extremely basic, but I really wanted it to have more of an impact when you're looking at it, like, oh, it's so big and it's like right behind, you know. And the children are not even aware of it, you know.
I'm really interested on that note of the, I guess, the storytelling process. So you sort of just touched on the like when you were developing the lurker character itself, but from the storytelling point, you touched on a little bit earlier as well, of like you kind of knew what the story was at the beginning, but I guess in a little bit more detail, like how does that kind of come to be? Like, do you know, you mentioned you knew the goal of the story at the beginning, but does it, as it's you're making each of the pieces, is the story developing in real time, or did you kind of have the story already sort of set before you started? Like how did the process influence the storytelling and what the story actually is from the beginning till now?
Yeah, so it's actually, I think, with NFTs, right? I feel like the space is moving really fast. So I've been, even though I'm releasing the artworks every week, so when I first started with the lurkers, I heard Papa Mumu speak that, you know, the storytelling, the narrative collections were missing, and he wanted more artists to show that. And I was just coming into space and I was like, oh wow, storytelling, love it. This is what I can do. And when I was brainstorming of what I could do, I knew I wanted to do the story that would start like super dark, and then it would have this message, and then things will get brighter and more colorful. So I was sketching out these ideas about the children and the little monsters, and I knew I came up with the whole team, and I kind of went into John Lee's collection, the first collection, and I kind of saw how many pieces he did, and I think he did about like 20. And I was like, okay, so I was taking an example from him, and I was like, if I break this down into 20 pieces, and if I can tell their story in that many pieces, like what each piece would be. So I mapped it all out, I sketched it all out, but I'm drawing these pieces each week as I go. And it is definitely like, the message is not changing, the story is not changing, but certain details are. Because I'm like, as I'm drawing these illustrations out and I'm adding so much into it, I'm like, oh wow, like I can add this and this, and like this could be that, and yeah. So it's been a little bit of both, you know.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, definitely. That sounds like a good way to do it, because you know the main points, that the beats of the story, I guess. But then, as you say, as you learn more, because I'm assuming you're learning more about the characters from week to week as well. As a we, so you'd be adding that in as you learn more and decide more.
Right. And then also, like, there's this point of selling each piece. So, you know, a storytelling, right, collection, like a storybook, like an actual storybook, it would be a little bit more different than trying to create these storytelling pieces that are individual and very strong on their own. So it's been a lot of that. Like, I know the story and I know what the message is and how I want to tell it, but how do I actually make it look so good that somebody wants to buy it. So the composition, the colors, like the characters, like how do they are just so impactful, I guess, from that one look. You know, so that has been the most challenging part, because I feel like I probably could have sketched it all out and illustrated it a lot faster if it was just the book, because you don't worry about selling each piece individually, you know. But so that's probably what was the hardest part, and like planning that out, you know.
Seems like we've default started moving towards the NFT conversation anyway, so might as well just get into no, don't apologize at all. So how did you actually discover, hey, that this is a whole new world where I can potentially start putting my work out there in that fashion and potentially start selling it? When did you kind of come across it? How did you realize it? What was the starting point?
I think I first heard about it sometime in the summertime last year. I heard about NFTs and the projects, and, you know, I would look up the projects they were selling, and I didn't like the art. So I was like, oh, I don't understand this. I don't even know what this is. And like, I had a few people reaching out to me and being like, oh, you should be putting your work out there. You know, like, I think you could do really well. And I was like, no, I don't think so. That wouldn't be the right fit for me. And then like, all of a sudden I started seeing some artists started to sell their artworks, and they had some success. So that immediately I was like, oh, okay, maybe it's not what I think it is. And then I actually knew some people that were doing the projects on Solana, and I was kind of keeping an eye on that. And then I noticed the whole one-on-one space. Like I noticed people selling the one-on-one pieces, like Pink. I remember coming across her work, and she was doing a lot of auctions for the pink skulls. And I was like, oh wow, like this is like such an opportunity for an artist to just like create a piece and put it out there. So that was immediately what I knew I wanted to try.
And what was that process for you? Like, did you kind of just dive into the deep end and just start creating? Did you reach out to people? How did you kind of warm up to that, to minting your work on the blockchain?
Yeah, so I didn't reach out to anyone. I joined Twitter because I knew the whole community was on Twitter. It was very, very intimidating because the last few years I was just being concentrated on growing my Instagram, and it's a whole different world, you know. So starting with something new, a new social media, that was so traumatizing too, because Instagram is so hard. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm starting Twitter with zero and I don't know how to use it. Like, how am I going to do this? But it was actually like pretty easy. I think everything that I learned from Instagram really helped me with Twitter and like starting my account. So I just started following the artists. Then I started following the collectors who were buying those pieces, and, you know, going through Holoplex, Exchange, Formfunction, just seeing what's out there. And I was really the observer for a really long time, like a couple of weeks, I would say. Started to kind of like put my sketches out there and my work, and kind of like listening to a lot of spaces. I think for like a week straight, I was like in every space, and I was just listening to what people were saying, and just kind of like thinking of like, what can I do and what can I bring and how can I stand out? And then when I felt confident, I just went for it. Started dropping the lurkers, and people immediately were like, what is this? What is this?
Yeah.
So that was kind of fun.
Yeah, you make it sound so much easier when you put it that way. But I guess, yeah, everyone has their own journey. Talk us through that point of actually putting work out there, like, because there's one thing kind of understanding it and kind of observing the landscape and being in spaces, but then actually minting your work and then having to like talk about it. Like, those are two different things, because there's a period where you're putting a body of work and you're kind of working away, and then there's like once you finished it, then you got to mint it and start talking about it to people. So maybe take us through that journey of having to market yourself and talk about your work to other people that you've never met before.
Right. So I knew that before I did any auctions, before I shared anything serious of what I wanted to do, I knew that I needed to have a little bit of the following, right? So I knew I needed to have followers and people who were interested in my work. So I was really thinking, how can I get to this point? So honestly, I just followed a lot of artists, the collectors, and I was stalking them. I mean, I don't know if you guys remember, but I was liking everybody's comments, and like comments to comments, and I was replying to everything. Like I was the biggest like stalker of the space for like 2 weeks, and I got a little bit of traction going because people are like, who is this person, you know? I also knew when people would notice me, they would go into my profile. So I knew I needed to have artworks right there. So I knew people needed to see it, and if they liked it, they would follow me. So I started trying out the Lurkers. I didn't sell those pieces. It was just like the Lurker sketches. So it was a couple of like commission pieces that I reworked. So I kind of make them darker. I added the kids, I added the Lurkers, and I just like put them on my profile. And then I went into the stalking mode of like all the like artists. And when they actually visited my profile, you know, they saw these pictures and they got a lot of likes and shares, and people were asking what it is. And then people started asking me when I'm minting this. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I actually have to do this now. But I started getting that really good traction. And I think I was at like 500 followers. And I was like, okay, I can do this now. And that happened really fast. That like happened like within like 2 weeks of like me joining the space. You know? So I was like, okay, I'm gonna try the auction and see how it goes. So I created the first 2 pieces of the Lurkers, and I put it out there. I posted, you know, and yeah, they sold like right off the bat. They sold for a lot, and I was in shock. Like I think my hands were shaking, like I couldn't breathe, like I didn't know what was going on because I really didn't know what to expect. I was really putting, you know, trying to connect with a lot of people and just put my work out there and hoping that people would see it and like it. But it was really hard to set the expectations for it.
Yeah, of course. And getting to such an getting to such a brilliant start, it's not a common thing. Not everyone would experience that. There's some people that have been in the space for probably a lot longer than you have and started before you that are still struggling to kind of get their work out there. And it's a testament to the type of art you're producing and the story that you're telling, which is brilliant. Which kind of segues into my next question. Luke, feel free to jump in. Sorry, I'm hogging all the time here and kind of feel free to ask any questions. But I guess you've been killing it in an NFT game, but how has that influenced kind of the other side of what got you to that point, which is the commission work, the contracting, the freelancing? Are you still doing that?
Yeah, so when that first auction happened and it was so successful, and I had people like really reaching out to me saying that they're really interested in it, I was like, oh wow, like now I have to like choose whether I'm gonna do this or I'm gonna do the commissions, which was again a very, very scary decision because it's my income, it's where I live off. And with NFTs, I was having a lot of success early on, but you never know how it's gonna go, right? So I finished off all the commissions that I had to do, and I'm really active on social media. So, and I feel like I really connect with people. So I posted a few times. I reached out to a lot of people. I said I'm pausing my commissions. The commissions are fully booked right now. Started to work on a new project, and just kind of like still like posted dog artworks, but not really take any custom pieces on. And just concentrated on the Lurkers. And I still have some people reaching out and they're waiting until I'm done with the collection. And I think then I will take a small batch and kind of like to keep that going as well, you know?
For sure.
What's it like on that? Because I think something that we kind of glossed over a couple of points ago is like how you engaged with people and how you, like, it sounds easy, but I think what you did was really smart, I guess, in terms of like observing for a while, heavily engaging, building that following on Twitter, and then starting to drop when you felt the time was right. But I that's how I started as well. Very very engagement heavy, and I understand exactly how much effort that takes. Like when you were talking about liking and commenting on comments and really getting deep in there, how do you do that across two? Like how do you do that across Instagram and Twitter, but with two completely separate subject matters? Like how do you manage that time, and how do you kind of like pull that off, I guess? Because that would be like, I'm only doing it for one, and that's a lot. So I can't even imagine doing that for two.
Mm.
Yeah, no, actually, I stopped with Instagram. I put that on I feel I'm a little bit over 10,000 followers now. And I think I'm at a very good number. And I do think I have a very dedicated following, because I think all those years and the portraits and, the service, the connections, I think it's paying off. So I'm lucky I'm able to kind of like put it on the back burner and not be very engaging on there, and just fully concentrate on Twitter, and just like build my following on here and just build the relationships on here. And on what I do is basically Twitter is all day, every day. And then in the evenings, I go on Instagram. And right before bed, when you do the like final scrolling, that's my Instagram time. So I go to like the pictures and the comments, and I try to be as engaging as I can for like half an hour. And that's about it. It's super minimal right now, but I don't think you can do both. I think like, because social media is so much work. It's so much work. The engagement, the commenting, the posting, it just takes everything out of you. And I think you have to concentrate on one.
Yeah, I don't know how
for sure.
I don't know how people do it. Like, I barely post something every 2 days, and I'm just like, that's enough for me. That's enough screen time. So kudos to those who just are constantly hustling. But also what I've noticed about you, Laura, is that you reply to almost every comment and like everything that someone would comment about your work. So like it's great to see that you've kind of gained this traction, and people do see you at that top tier level, because you've definitely reached some dope heights, but yet you still remain grounded and humble, and you still reply and you give genuine feedback when needed and stuff like that. And that's really cool to see. It's just like, because you see a lot of artists when they reach that point, it's just like, wow, like that person used to talk to me and, comment and stuff and blah, blah, blah. But now they've reached that height. They don't respond to me. That kind of left me out in the cold. So to see you still do that, that's brilliant. And it speaks volumes about who you are as a person as well, not just in the Twitter world. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and thank you so much for saying that. I think because I think this is who I am. I really grew up with nothing. I grew up with, like I mentioned, with so much of badness in my world. It really like made me super humble and super appreciative of everything. So I really try to practice that every day, like the gratitude, like, somebody's like, and yeah, I try to reply to every single comment, because somebody's taking their time to write something nice to me. Like, and of course I'm going to reply and say something nice. And I also, when I send a comment to somebody, like I really appreciate when they respond, like it's just like it really makes me feel nice, and it's that connection. So I really try to do my best to do that. And I would never want to feel anyone to feel excluded in any way. It's just not the way I am. I'm a very friendly person. So that's the number one thing for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think of it in the same way, because I'm very similar, replying to everybody. And I think of it in the sense of like, if you said something to me right now and I just didn't say anything back, like that would be horrible. So I think of it in the same way. Like if I had sent a statement and you both were just silent, it would be crickets, and it would make me feel like shit. So I think about it in the exact same way. Like it's asynchronous and it's a bit more delayed, but at least you can still like reply to people and like, make them feel heard, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like I am a sensitive person, and I am an overthinker. So I do always think of scenarios of like, like what if that was me, like I would not like that. So yeah, you just always try to put the good out there, and hopefully good comes back to you.
For sure. And speaking of putting good out there, I don't know how long this was ago, maybe a couple of months ago, I noticed that you had bought a car for your auntie. Talk us through that moment there, because buying something of that significance to someone would have been a massive deal, not just financially, but just mentally, just the feeling of giving would have been great. So just talk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, that was probably one of the biggest highlights of like any of my years, because she has been so good to me, and I always knew I was going to get her a car. I want to get her a better car maybe next year, but she's been so good to me, and she's been so supportive. She's been going through a lot of health problems. She has really bad diabetes, and she's really, really struggling with that. But her car, so I was waiting. I knew I was going to get her a car. Like I knew it when the Lurkers started to be successful. I'm like, okay, like I know I'm going to do something really, really nice for her at the end of the collection, But her car broke down. So she actually, the car stopped working. She couldn't use it. And, she has like the hospital appointments and the doctor's appointments. And I was like, oh, I'm just going to do it. So, she went out and she picked it herself, and I just transferred the money over. And unfortunately, I couldn't be there for her, but it was just such a huge moment. It felt really, really good. And it felt amazing to know that I was able to do that from art, That's one of the biggest things. It's like something that I created, that I was able to do that with, and she of course was over the moon,
The validation from that, and kind of just like just things are falling into place, aren't they? It's just like, yeah, cool. Like I've made up to a certain point. Now I'm like helping out my family from your creation. Like that type of what goes through your head must be crazy at the moment, because not a lot of people get to experience that, to say, hey, shit that I'm putting out there, it's being consumed, is being loved by people, but it's also, giving me an opportunity to live my life, but also live my truth. I'm not having to you're not having to respond to commissioned work and working towards briefs. You're kind of just putting out your own work, and people just appreciate that. So that must be a total buzz on its own.
Yeah, it is. And, the Lurkers, I think now that I'm coming towards the end, have been really hard because, like I said, staying on narrative and trying to create like amazing pieces each week and just hoping that they're like strong on their own and they tell a big story. It's very, very stressful in a way too, because you want to like keep going strong with a collection, and it's a lot of pieces in it,
For sure.
But I do try every day. I do try to like remind myself that I'm extremely lucky, and like I am like so grateful, because I am in a position where a lot of people wish to be, so I do try to, even on the days when I'm the most stressed out, I try to enjoy it, and be thankful for it. And it's been absolutely amazing. It's been life-changing.
Absolutely.
Like they say, and it's changed life, and they did for me for sure.
Yeah.
Thinking about that stress, or just a quick question right there while we're there, just thinking about that stress that you mentioned. I'm interested to understand I'm assuming that there would be pressure. So coming out the gate so strong, and then just having like ongoing success over the series, like how, as you drop a piece, like is there a pressure in yourself to like outdo the last? Like how do you deal with that? I guess the stress of like trying to maintain the same level of quality or the same level of hype around the drops.
It's definitely stressful because like it's a darker story, right? And it started off so dark, but I feel like a lot of people prefer color in a way, or like something a little bit more happy. So like to be like communicating this narrative like successfully, and then like drawing something that would like people love and want to display on their digital screens, or get it printed, it's been really, really hard, because I feel like I could create an amazing piece of a city, right, and it would look so good, but I also have to stay with a narrative, and do something different each week. So I've tried animations, and I tried like little music, and I tried to kind of like change it up. And another thing I guess that is stressful is staying on schedule with it, because I started, right? And I got a little bit of traction, and I got my name out there. So I obviously wanted to keep that going. And creativity, like we're all creatives, right? It kind of comes in waves, like because we're not like robots, right? So it's very hard to be producing this like amazing quality work each week. Like it doesn't really happen like that, So to like constantly be pushing through and like staying inspired and just like getting it done. It's been like towards the end, it's definitely like adding up a little bit. So I do think I will take a little bit of a break afterwards, just like tiny, maybe a week or two, just to kind of refresh
everyone, I'm sure. What I wanted to ask earlier was just to switch up the gears a bit. Like, you're obviously giving back to your family, you're pursuing your truth, and there's a lot of character in that, and we love seeing your work. But what does Laura do to kind of decompress, declutter, and kind of just remain that, maintain that equilibrium, or a balance? What do you do outside of art to kind of maintain that?
That actually makes me really laugh, because I think the balance that I get, like I draw, so the Lurkers is now becoming this big thing that I'm really, really putting a lot of effort into it. Mm-hmm. But I think to like get a little bit of balance into just something like a little bit more easy go, and like I just have to draw something else, to kind of like balance me out a little bit. But outside of art, I would say like I've been terrible at this. I have such a bad balance between life and work. It's incredibly bad. But I've been really trying to get up early in the morning and go for a walk with my dog, and like do a really long walk or go for a jog, do something like that, like with the sunrise. Like it feels really nice for me. Like it just kind of like starts me off like really good for the day if I do that.
Absolutely. So there's like no like meditation or yoga or like just, I don't know, something that's,
But God knows I need it.
I think we all do.
Yeah, for sure. No, not yet. I think the little jogs have been helping me just to kind of like get that exercise there. But no, I think just like relaxing with a TV show is probably a good thing too. I just kind of like turn my brain off, just watch a good show or a movie.
Yeah, for sure. We're starting to wrap up here. Believe it or not, it's been an hour since we got you on. I told you it wasn't going to feel like it.
Not at all.
Yeah, for sure. It's been like, seriously, I've got so many more questions to ask you, but again, it's Sunday evening. No, not Sunday, is it? Yeah, Sunday evening.
Sunday,
where you are.
Yeah, Sunday.
Yeah. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I guess in terms of what you've got going on at the moment, you've said you've got 2 more pieces that you're yet to mint and kind of go to auction with. When do we anticipate those to kind of go live? Do you have a date in mind?
So I actually will be publishing or sharing the Lurkers full story, or story up to date, before I launch the last 2 pieces.
Yeah.
So I'm just working on finishing up the story, because I want people to actually understand it. Because like right now I've been letting people to kind of put their own meaning to it and understand it in their own way of what it is, of these like dark spirits. But I want to put my words out there and tell them of what I created and what the story is and what the meaning is. And so I probably think it's probably going to be about maybe another week or 2, probably like 2 weeks, to kind of like just really get it on for the good end,
Yeah, awesome. And another question that I tend to ask all the artists that we interview, and I think most of the answers were mentioned by default during this entire conversation, but I guess it's still good to kind of ask it just so we can hear your version of it. But if someone is wanting to kind of do art full-time or jump into this NFT space to express themselves and put their work out there, what would be that one piece of advice that you'd give them?
I think this is like a super loaded question, because I think, so this is the way I look at it, right? You can be an artist, or you can be artist that is creating artwork for sale, right? So I think if you're just coming in as an artist, you're just going to be drawing what you like, super easy. You create what you like, you share that. Mm-hmm. If you're concentrating on selling something, then you have to start thinking about your marketing, your branding, your style, how cohesive you are, how often you're releasing. Like you start to think about all the specifics, and really concentrate on those and nail those down, So I think it's just like picking that route of like which way you want to go.
Sure, you got.
And I don't think wrong or right answer. I think it just like depends on the person, you know.
Yeah, no, absolutely, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, it sounds like it depends on your goal, like where you're trying to get to, kind of thing.
Yeah, but I think any artist, I think just being the observer and just kind of like understanding the space before, and just like getting the relationships, the connections, you know, before you actually launch something, and just like seeing how your art can fit into it and bring something new, and you know, how you can be a part of the community. I think it's really, really important to kind of like just decide that before you like full on do your auctions and stuff like that. I think that really helps.
Yeah, 100%. And there's definitely a consistent theme with everyone that we've asked, is that kind of grace period, or that warm-up period, where you need to kind of just hang around and kind of just hear everything, absorb all this knowledge around you before you take the first step, because that could kind of make or break your brand, starting off with.
Yeah, like, I mean, I've seen people like launch into space with like, 10, 20 followers, and they drop the auction and nobody really knows who they are, or what their work is or what they're doing. Like I think like you need to tell people of that, before you start to sell. Yeah,
absolutely. Thank you so much for your time. This has been a blast getting to know you at that kind of deeper level, and thank you so much for taking us through your background and kind of your story of growing up and stuff. There's definitely a lot of parallels that people are going to find themselves when they listen to this and identify with it. For those who don't know you, or those who aren't in the NFT space, please just plug yourself. Tell us your socials. Where can they go to find you?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter. I'm Laurael. And on all the socials, I'm the same. All spelled out. I guess we can tag it, right?
Sure, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
I just wanted to say that, like, thank you so much, guys, for having me and for having this like super open conversation and asking about me, and just it's been amazing to be able to share that, and I really appreciate it. I appreciate your time.
No, we appreciate your time. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. No, don't thank us. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing, for being so open, and thank you for the art as well. Like your story is so inspiring, and like the fact that you've taken that plunge and you're doing it. It's like a dual plunge. You kind of took the first plunge into art, and then you've taken a plunge off commission work into your own stuff. It's just like, yeah, it's just so cool to hear, and so like inspiring and motivational to make me want to just keep pushing, kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, taking some risks, but yeah, I really, really appreciate you guys. It's been really nice to talk to you.
It's been awesome to connect and chat. Thank you so much for your time, and I'm definitely excited to launch this episode and get it out there. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks, guys.